Hey, it's Luxury Travel Docs here today, and we are in Covington, Louisiana, and we are at the Southern Hotel. Now, before we get started, I want to make sure I remind you that all profits from our social media are donated to charity. We cut a check at the end of the year to charity from everything that we earn. So please help give by liking our video, subscribing to our channel, or you can follow us on other social media sites that we have. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and I'll make sure that I drop notes to those locations in the notes below this video so you can find us real easily. So why did we choose to come to Covington, Louisiana? Now, you know that New Orleans is very near and dear to our hearts for several reasons, and at times when you go to New Orleans, and especially the French Quarter, it can become overwhelming. And so we decided on this trip that we were going to try to come to the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain and come to a quieter area, which was Covington, Louisiana. Now, some friends recommended the Southern Hotel to us, and we were amazed because we really found it to be a hidden gem in a nice, quiet, southern town, and we've truly enjoyed our stay. So today we are with Shannon Stansbury, who is the beverage director of the Southern Hotel, and we want to talk to him a little bit about our experience, but also your vision for this wonderful location. So we stumbled into the Cypress Bar. Mostly we were drawn to it because of the feel of the bar. There are some beautiful murals in there that really represent the history of Covington, which is a very interesting history. And then we noticed that there were some unique things on the menu that really reflected the history. And as we sat there, we were drawn into the family feel of this hotel by the staff that work there. And then, wow, we actually had some of the drinks that were on the menu and sampled several of them and just were amazed. And we've been to bars all over the world. We've had some very unique drinks, but we were really enthusiastic about everything that we tried. We were surprised that we experienced that here. So, and of course, I think we owe a lot of that to you. So I'm going to let you kind of take it from here, but I think, you know, what I would say is start with your background, and we'll kind of talk some more about what your vision is.
So my name's Shannon. I'm originally from Covington here in Louisiana. I grew up in this town. And when I was a boy here, it was and still is just a very small town. So I left right after high school. I didn't see anything for a young boy here, and have spent about 22 years kind of wandering around like a gypsy throughout the country and a little bit outside of the country. And service industry, whether it was restaurants, hotels, bar life, was always kind of the through line of that. And my wife and I were looking at starting a family, and seemed like a good idea to move back down here. I was living in Colorado at the time that I heard the hotel was going to be opening, and when I was a child it was an old courthouse, and it had been many things over its day. And I remember looking at Rebecca and being like, Covington can never support a hotel like that. I don't know why these crazy people are going to do this. And I'm very glad that I was wrong, very, very wrong. So when we came back down, it seemed pretty natural for me to come in and see what was going on here at the hotel. I had met the owner at a dinner, not knowing neither one of us knowing who the other were, and just started talking, and she talked about the bar program and what they were doing, and it wasn't quite what she had envisioned. And then a few months after that, I started here. It's a lovely bar. The murals are by Graham Minaj, same gentleman who did this. Those murals he did over one weekend. He's a workhorse. This one, it took him about a week, and we had the foresight to set up time lapse, so it's a really fun video to watch. It's like a 3-minute video, just all over the place. But when I got here, the Cypress Bar, I guess maybe the biggest thing is what I saw was there was no real identity to it. It was a lot of bottles of alcohol and a lot of beers and a lot of wines.
Very reflective of
the
area.
And I I started by asking our staff what we're not. If we don't have an identity, let's define what we aren't first. And in so doing, we'll kind of land organically with who we are and what we want to accomplish. And just from the very beginning, really worked hard to ensure that my staff and my team have a creative environment. And I think a big part of that, at least from my point of view, is acceptance of failures, right? We can't be creative if we're not allowing or willing to watch them stumble, make mistakes, or fail from time to time. And I think it's interesting in the South, workers are maybe just treated differently. When I was in Manhattan, Los Angeles, staff would be very receptive to make some crazy cocktail I've never heard of. And if it's bad, so what? We'll try again. They would kind of jump to that challenge quickly. When I got here and kind of issued that challenge, a lot of my team were like, well, but what if it's not good? Then we won't drink it.
Right,
we'll just push it aside and work on something else. So it took a little while, I think, both for them to gain the trust that me as their leader wasn't going to berate them for it.
Exactly what I was
And that they could kind of step on a ledge every now and then. Once that moment kind of happened and we kind of assembled a really great team, things started moving really quickly. And it was kind of beautiful to behold. It was really as simple as allowing them to build some trust in me as a leader, putting together the right team of people who had slightly different palates or different interests, so they could kind of make this amalgamation of this
Which I think
list.
is important, because your clientele is going to be different in every way.
Quite varied. And I'm proud of the work that they did. It's an interesting part of the world in that in Manhattan I could throw a quarter out the window and hit a bartender. And Covington's population is 8,000. It's not as deep in that regard.
So I have a question for you, actually. With you having been from here and left and then came back, and this is something that I'm going to put in our blog post a little bit, is, we're well aware of the relocation that occurred from New Orleans after Katrina. And I mean, do you see a great influence on Covington itself?
It's interesting. I mean, Covington's population just about doubled within a few months after the storm. And Covington's in a weird moment, kind of straddling or maybe deciding its future. I think this is a moment where a lot of those decisions will be made because it grew very quickly. Infrastructure had to be put in place, and I see now where it's being a little more foresight's involved with what's going on in Covington, and so it's kind of a neat, exciting moment to watch what's going to happen next.
Do you think it changed the clientele that you anticipated you might have here, or do you think?
That's maybe a little tricky to be objective about. I was younger when I lived here and left. I do know that when I was growing up here, it was by definition we went to the city. There was naught to do in Covington,
Right.
And working here at the hotel is the first time in a lifetime where I hear a lot of people coming from the city here. And it's nice to see that kind of play out in reverse.
Yeah.
To have people come to the hotel and be like, well, we're from New Orleans, but we wanted to get away and come over here, and it's just
Do you find that people come to the Southern Hotel to stay overnight from New Orleans, or do they come for the evening and go back?
A little bit of a mix of both. It's
a long drive over the Causeway.
It is a pretty decent drive. I can attest that if you're from here, it just kind of becomes a matter of habit. So it doesn't maybe feel as long. It is maybe the most boring bridge in the world, because it's just 30 minutes of ba-doop, 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 ba-doop as you go across the lake. But probably a good mix. I mean, we have a fair amount of people, usually not just one night, but we'll come out for a couple nights, weekend. Like you said kind of at the beginning, it's a quiet place. And we hear guests tell us all the time that it's like time slows down. And we're already in the Deep South. So it's pretty profound if we are now taking pretty slow time and slowing it down even more. But our guests speak to that it's a quiet, relaxing getaway. Interestingly, when the Southern Hotel first opened, it opened in 1907, and it was the retreat from New Orleans. People would take the Josie steamer across the lake and stay here for exactly those reasons. So kind of like The Alchemist, or it's just come full circle yet again. It is now a hotel, and they're coming here for the same reasons they did 100 and 17, 13 years ago. Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I like that. We were truly surprised at what just a beautiful community this is, and how it really embraces its heritage, essentially, and its history. And I think it was the bicentennial just recently, and so that's been kind of a pleasure to walk around town and see the photographs of what this actual vantage point looked like 200 years ago, or at some point in the past. So that's been exciting. So I was also last night was Wednesday night, and we'll talk some more about what you specifically do on Wednesday nights. But I found it interesting that there were, I think they were locals, were all coming in the door to come to this establishment, to this bar, and enjoy themselves. And I thought that was really kind of remarkable to see that.
It's a lot of fun. So the Cypress Bar has a pretty strong local following. I remember initially when I started here, I'd get asked by guests a lot, like, was it for hotel guests only? No, absolutely not. Please come play with us, have a good time. And it's a pretty strong local following now. We're known as a cocktail bar more than just like a beer bar or wines. Interestingly, one of the first things I did when I got here was try and recreate or reinvigorate our wine list. New Orleans has such a large wine culture, and I put together a very French-centric wine list because of the part of the world that we're in. But we are just not a wine bar. I did not do very well with that wine list. But we've certainly become known as a cocktail bar, and we try to push those boundaries and make really exceptional, unique cocktails. We have on the order of around 52 different bottles of whiskey at any given time. And while my name is Shannon and I would like that choice, it's still decided by my guests ultimately. I'm just happy that they like whiskey too. And so those are really the things that we're known most for. A lot of whiskeys.
I think Rebecca called it Covington's living room, and I just think that's such a great way to kind of sum up the entire experience here.
It has that feel. I mean, in service, we call the lobby the living room set. There's like the couches right in front of the fireplace, and it's some of our guests' favorite place to be. I'll watch people come in the door and go, "Ow, somebody's there already," you know?
Yeah, that was us last night.
Yeah.
We were sitting there last night, which was perfect.
It's a nice, cozy spot. And I mean, we have those guests. It's almost like the person on the left bank who's has the cup of coffee and just reads the paper and just kind of hangs out for a while. We have guests who come in. We have a knitting club who comes in twice a month, and they hang out in that spot and just knit and chat and have a little bit of coffee. And I think anytime when you have guests that come in and are willing to, in a very relaxed way, just spend that kind of time, it's an excellent moment because they trust in what you're doing. They're comfortable enough to simply just relax and hang out. So it's nice to see.
So what do you find is your most popular drink, would you say, just across the board?
So historically, we have a cocktail called the Sage Advice, and it's kind of a modern take on the old Greyhound, which is vodka and grapefruit. And Sage Advice is vodka, grapefruit, some elderflower liqueur called Saint Germain, some sage leaves, and then it's topped with champagne, which just gives it a drier, crisp taste overall. And that has almost always, since I've been here, kind of the #1 cocktail.
Really?
Every now and then, the fall-winter menu, when the season gets somewhat cold for our point of view, we'll have some of the warmer, like the hot buttered rum will creep up there. When we had to close during the pandemic and reopen, we had started the show, and we'll talk about that a bit later, but one of the things I said on the show as the guests were watching is I challenged them to, this week, find everything you can in your backyard or on your property, and next week let me know what it is and we'll guide you through making some cocktails. So when we reopened, I didn't want to be hypocritical to my guests, and I live out in Folsom, about half an hour north of here, and my wife and child and I spent a couple days just getting all the blackberries off the bushes that we could, and so we did a blackberry lemonade margarita. When we reopened, it was a very short, abbreviated spring-summer menu, and that was the first time the Sage Advice was not the #1 cocktail consistently. It was just very seasonal and refreshing and something new. and fun for people. Those two have been some of our better ones. We are very well known for our old fashions. The guests tell us it's the best around. I'm a little biased, so it's hard to be objective about that. I do think they're
we
fantastic.
had one and it was delicious.
Yeah,
We had one
yeah.
last night. Actually, and we had one a couple nights ago as well.
It's the Luxardo cherry is the real superstar of that drink and the secret weapon, so to speak. We do a couple things differently. It's not your father's old fashioned. It's not the old fashioned from the 70s or the 80s. It's not maraschino cherries and half an orange just smashed up together. It's treated with a little more care and a lot less sugar. So the whiskey really leads forward in that drink, and everything else just kind of lifts up that whiskey or highlights it.
Right, and you actually touch upon something that I think I mentioned to you the other day. So, traveling around the world, we always hear, craft cocktails or mixology, and those terms to me always, I interpret it as 100,000 calories, lots of sugar, and I really wanted nothing to do with that. So it was, for me, a pleasant experience to learn actually what you do for some of these and how natural they actually are, and not artificial, and not full of just, simple syrup that is, just
sugar upon sugar.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's, from a middle-aged woman's standpoint, that's, it's important to us. So it's kind of interesting.
To me, I've got Irish metabolism, so it's less about the diet approach in life and more about ultimately the flavor of what we're putting in front of you, what we're giving to the guest. And I think I mentioned too, I'm not completely against pre-flavored spirits, but they're so often heavy on sugars or corn syrup, or it's a lot of chemicals that will make it taste like raspberry or strawberry. And it's a large reason why we do so much of the infusion work that we do. It's hard to compete when we're using fresh produce, berries, or veg. It's hard to do better than that. Real fresh cucumbers in a bottle of vodka can make something really special, and it's not chemically or again laden with all that sugar, and it makes a big difference.
Now, I was really surprised in talking to you about how much effort goes into making the infusions or the components to a particular cocktail, and so you went through, what your staff is doing during the day. They're not just dusting off the bottles.
No.
They're doing a lot of work.
The daytime really prepares the nighttime to be successful. And we have a small hotel bar, so it's tricky when we're very busy to pull off the kind of cocktails we want to pull off in the middle of all that in a very confined space. So we do a lot of our prep work during the day, and a lot of the things that we put in the cocktails oftentimes are more expensive than the spirits that we're using, or they take more work to do. So we do try and prep a lot backstage before the show, so to speak. And infusion work accomplishes a lot of that. We do a lot of different syrups and reductions and honeys and things like that, that really kind of help put depth of flavor profile into cocktails, neat little surprises in the cocktails, things like that. So that in the evening, particularly on, say, a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night when we are very busy, the bartender can spend some time with you and not all the time setting things on fire and putting things together and being so crafty, as it were.
Right. Yeah, and I think Glenn, he had one of the barrel...
The barrel-aged smoked old-fashioned.
And he was amazed how the drink evolved over the course of, maybe it took him, 45 minutes to drink it, but how it changed from the minute it was poured, almost like a glass of fine wine we were talking about.
Yeah, as it opens.
Yeah.
It's a really special cocktail. I mean, again, I love whiskey, so it's really great for me. And smoking it kind of both mellows and pulls all those flavors together. But it goes back to doing a lot of that prep work backstage before the show, so to speak. It's the way we produce that cocktail builds a progression of flavor as it kind of moves through your palate as you drink it. And as Glenn noticed, as you drink it, it kind of opens up even more. And it's one of those things that simply can't be rushed. You use the phrase craft cocktails and mixology, and there's a lot of terminology in my industry that becomes very trendy. And McDonald's makes craft coffee, right?
Yes.
So it's one of those moments like, sure, craft cocktails, and it's everywhere in the world now. And whether you call it craft or mixology, ultimately to me, it's patience and care. It doesn't matter what decade we're living in or what we refer to it as, but we work as a team to make sure that we're treating what we do with care, because we're those crazy people who really love what we do, and have the patience to get it done the right way. And so with the barrel age, it's a 2-week infusion with oranges and the Luxardo cherries, and then a month in a smaller barrel, which is roughly equivalent to a year aging in a regular size barrel. And you get all of those different notes, as Glenn noticed, as you drink through it. That smoke will hit you right away early, and then kind of the caramelization and the slight heat from the wood, and then the sweetness starts coming out. And I love it for that reason. The smoking works really well for margaritas too.
Really?
If you're a margarita fan.
I would never have thought.
It again kind of mellows it, and I like to make them with mezcal, which is already kind of smoky, but it mellows the overall sharpness of tequila and the citrus that you use in that too, so they play out really well when you smoke them.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I don't go around smoking things all the time, so I can't,
We have
really.
we have sometimes just that mad scientist behavior and giddiness about it. We got a smoke gun, let's try it with this, let's try it with that, and here's a torch, and set things on fire. And
I think we talked about that the other day, that we have a very dear friend who is a prodigy in the pottery world, and he has his book of glazes and all these chemical reactions, and I looked at it, I said, I feel like I'm back in chemistry again. And I think what you do is very much akin to that. And I find it fascinating.
There's a fair amount of chemistry involved. I wish I could say there was a fair amount of physics involved, but there's not really. But there's a lot of, particularly with, again, the work that we do in the back pantry during the day, we have to hit specific temperatures for specific periods of times to allow sugars and starches and caramelization and all the things that we're chasing down to happen properly. I think we talked about the caramelized apple bourbon that we make, and that's a good example of both chemistry and cannot be rushed. I was working with Becca Foote, one of our barbacks. I point there like you can see her through the walls, but one of our barbacks earlier today, and she was working on that, and I walked in and was like, wait, let's pull this pan away and kind of start over. It has to really be like this, and this is the color. And she's been a new addition to our team, and she was fantastic because she's just eating it all up. And she just kind of stood there and she was like, oh, I see. So I was like, yeah, passion, go, have fun.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely the science. And I think one of the reasons myself and a lot of my team enjoy it is you can strike a blend of science and art. There's by the numbers, and then there's a point where you have to just kind of rely on your intuition to understand by the number mentality and let it go, and then run with the art of it,
Yeah, I mean, that's, I never really imagined how much went into it. So the other drink I want to mention, because it's so delicious and I know it's so popular, is the Bananas Foster rum. That's a rum, but it's certainly a drink that is totally developed here. And it is. A lot of care goes into that.
It's very decadent. It's very indulgent. One of the things that I say often, again, going back to being Irish and having that metabolism, life is short. Treat yourself. Have sugar. I have not one sweet tooth, but all of them are sweet teeth. It's a fabulous cocktail and a fabulous rum. So very early in my life, I worked at Brennan's, and they were the creators of Bananas Foster. It is not Banana Fosters, but Bananas Foster. And the Foster family would go to the restaurant all the time. He was the mayor of New Orleans, and they kind of created this dessert for them. The family was like, oh, we like bananas and ice cream, and this kind of evolved between the restaurant and the family, and that's why it got the name Bananas Foster. But I really, throughout my entire career, owe them a lot. Like, they raised me the right way and taught me both service standards and how to be. One of the things that we chase after here is service that is Southern, quite frankly. It's built right into the name. Whereas I worked in places in Manhattan that were very, very nice and service standards were wonderful, but it started to feel maybe cold or sterile. And so we want to be open arm formal service, if that makes sense. A little touch of formality because we are a nicer property, but still just very welcoming and warm. And they really helped instill a lot that in me. And so throughout my career, there was always just an idea somewhere back here that one day I could do something to honor them. And it was here as the beverage director where I don't remember exactly what triggered it, but one day I was like, I could do that here. This is my bar. I can make this Bananas Foster thing. And it's been a lot of fun. And it takes a couple hours for each bottle that we produce, just for the cooking and the spicing and the flambe of the bananas. And then that all has to rest in the rum for about 7 days before we can actually get it out into service. And it is one of those rare things that we pour just from the bottle. Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned to you, like, all the work for that cocktail is done behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to sometimes we can get busy and it's a small bar, so I wanted my bar staff to have something they could do really quickly, mm-hmm. but still taste like a lot of work and time went into it, mm-hmm. and it does taste that way. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
It's I think I enjoy it better than the actual dessert, I have to say. So it was delicious. So I'm glad you touched upon the welcoming Southern hospitality, mm-hmm. because I wanted to say to you that I really feel your staff has been outstanding at Excellent. Welcoming us, but we see it with not just us, but with everybody who comes in.
Yeah.
I went into the lounge last night, and one of your staff said, I was thinking about you today, and told me what reminded her of me, and I said, I was thinking about you, and this is why. So that was really, that's kind of a refreshing thing to feel when you go to an establishment, even in near such a big city, and I lived for a long time in the Northeast, and I know how things completely different up there. So you've really achieved that here among all the staff, and that's a wonderful thing in my opinion. And we're all about meaningful travel. We want meaningful and healthy travel, and we want things to be meaningful to us. From the history in the bar, to the names of the drinks, to the experience that we have, to the way that we're treated and made to feel special. And I think those things are very important.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to touch upon, unless you have anything else that you want to bring up, is we noticed last night that, and that was Wednesday night, that you have a Facebook Live show that you do. And we love to engage on Facebook Live. Mm-hmm. And the reason that we like that, and in particular with you, the reason I think it's such a great thing is that you're there and you're maybe instructing or you're giving some ideas to your audience, but your audience can also interact with you and ask you anything. And if you never engage with Facebook Live, you can be engaging with the person who is running the live portion of it. You can always go back and watch the videos at a later time if you can't be there live, but it's best to be there live because you can answer questions. And gosh, as somebody who would be without any experience whatsoever to make some of these cocktails or experiment, it's nice to have a little bit of guidance. I mean, I could see me at my counter, typing and trying to do things. So why don't you go ahead and mention a little bit about that, because I really think that that's a great opportunity for our viewers to engage with you.
This started, and first off, it's been a whole lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful when you can have something that's effective for your guests and a lot of fun for you too, right? Like I mentioned at the end of the show last night, I'm like, just thanks, because this is my job because of you. So thanks for that side. But we started this when we had to close the hotel back in March. My boss and I, Ben Roberts, the general manager of the hotel, were just talking, we felt almost like we had let our community down in a weird way. And like I said earlier, we care about what we do and we like it. So it's a side that we take seriously, and that mentality of the innkeeper, the keeper of the community, the one who held everyone together, we really just feel like we have to come up with some way to be engaged and have fun with our guests. There's no money in it. Clearly we didn't care about that side because we were closed,
Yeah, right.
So we're like, let's just do a live show on Facebook. The reasons we chose Wednesdays is we have a few different days of the week where happy hours are kind of thematic. And on Wednesdays, it's Walker Percy Wednesdays. He was a Southern writer who lived here in Covington. Wonderful flow and style and rhythm to his language that he uses. And on Wednesdays when we are open, and we are now, that happy hour, it's the old fashions are $5 all day long. And it's a fundraiser for Covington's Public Art Fund. And so it's a little close to all of our hearts. and it's whiskey involved, and I like Walker Percy as a writer, so it seemed like the right day to do this show. And so in the beginning, we were like, oh, we'll just, we'll guide them through a couple of cocktails. We thought we might do this for a few weeks, and then the world will reopen, and we'll kind of let it go and never revisit it. And while we were closed, that format was a little different in that it was much more instructional than you saw last night. The bar was closed, so it was quiet. We could set up all of the products and be like, we're going to show you how to make our old fashioned today. We did, one of the episodes was the Bananas Foster infusion. Like, this is how we do it, this is how we do all the cooking, and then this is how we turn that into a cocktail. So in the beginning, it was a lot more instructional, and we kind of walked through very specific things. And then we, reopened, and I would have guests in the bar. So it kind of evolved to more of a fireside chat, Norm at Cheers kind of thing. It's a little hybrid of like, we kind of pick a theme each week. Like hey guys, next week we're going to talk about how to make bitters at home and what kind of tools you might need and why you should not be intimidated by making your own bitters at home. It's really easy to do. And then just, like you said, feedback from them, like, what do you want to know about today? Like, I've kind of talked through what I had planned out for the day. What's on y'all's minds? How are you doing? Oh my gosh, do you see the hurricanes coming at us again? If you're trapped at home, here's a great warming cocktail during hurricane, And it really has been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of guests through that venue. And it's weird, every now and then my boss and I are like, is it still viable? Is it still valid? Like, we had 8 viewers tonight. Maybe we should kind of move on. And then like the next day I'll go to like the Renaissance Fair and somebody will be like, oh my gosh, we watch your show. I'm like, I've never even seen you, It's a lot of fun because it keeps us not just plugged in with our guest in a weird way, almost real time than sitting at the bar environment itself. But it kind of keeps our creativity flowing, because there's been weeks where we're like, well, what are we going to talk about, man? Like, we've gone through whiskeys and glassware and bartender tools and how to do bitters and infusions and skinny cocktails and all these different topics. Do we just circle back and start all over? And so it keeps us kind of fresh creatively. It's a lot of fun to really reach out to guests on almost a more one-on-one basis and be like, what are you interested in? And there's been a few episodes I've been that candid, like, I'm going to do a fall-winter menu. What do you want?
Right.
I can pick them all day long. What would you love to see this coming season that you haven't seen here before? And so it's kind of nice in that regard. And I give out my email address all throughout the show and tell people, I can go and do much deeper information through email. I'm happy to give out any recipes that we use, things like that. And I've had quite a few guests email me from the show, and it's been a lot of fun kind of making new relationships with them and discovering new people. And one of my favorites was I had a guest who unwittingly had us create like 3 different cocktails, because it was just simple as she struggles to go out and drink because she felt she had a palate or flavor profile that was unusual for the South. And Chris and I, who do the show a lot together, were like, what is it you're looking for? Like, what do you mean so unique? And she's like, oh, this kind of thing. And Chris, to his credit, came back to me the next day and he's like, I was thinking about it. I put together these 3 different recipes. Next week, let's walk her through it. And then when we reopened, she was able to come in and have them and be like, oh my gosh, they're great. And it's just nice to have that through line with a guest that's not during business, so to speak. That's not a exchange of money kind of relationship, or hey, welcome to my bar kind of relationship, but just something different.
And I just I think it's a great idea, and it seems to be very well received, and certainly something that I'll be looking for. Like I said, I'll be at my island, trying to do some of these things. So I love that you also mentioned about the Wednesday night with the proceeds going to charity, and that's just such a great thing.
It's Covington's kind of evolving into more of an artistic town, and it's neat to see its benefit too. Like at Bogafalaya Park, which is just a couple blocks down the way, really pretty park if you haven't been over there. There's now a bronze statue of Walker Percy, and that's a result of public fund for art. There's some things over at the library, and it's just nice to see it. It really is.
Well, it's good to hear. So I mean, that again, that really embodies everything that we're about. Since we retired, we really want to dedicate our time to being creative, but also leading meaningful lives, and trying to find that in travel many times, or find that in the people that we meet, which is always a big surprise and always rewarding. So is there anything else? I think what you didn't say about your Facebook Live is when is it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And where can they find that?
So we do it on the Southern Hotel's Facebook page, and it's Wednesdays from 5 to 6 Central Time,
Right,
if you're elsewhere in the world.
6 Eastern.
6 Eastern.
Yes.
I guess that would be 3 in the
We're
afternoon
East Coast
in Los
time, so
Angeles
yeah,
on West
yeah,
Coast time.
yeah.
And if you're on like GMT time, I don't know what to tell you. It's 5
Yeah.
o'clock Central Time. It runs for an hour each time. And I keep telling myself when I get caught up, I'll go through Facebook and download them all. And we have a YouTube channel and name them, title them like the Bitters episode and put them up on YouTube. But that is an undertaking in of itself.
I think you could find a staff member who could
Yeah.
probably do that. Maybe someone who's 18. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's their specialty.
They need that kind of time.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And they could probably do it like in 2 seconds,
Yeah.
whereas it would take me, 2 days.
Yeah, it would
So,
take me quite a while
Yeah,
too.
I can't get all that straight. So, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Not that I can think
Yeah.
of, other than,
Yeah.
I mean, thanks for coming and discovering
Yeah.
us. It's been a pleasure having you all around and chatting a little bit. I
Yeah.
hope to see maybe some new faces as a result. If you've
Yeah.
seen this, just ask for me and we'll have some fun times too.
Yeah, make sure you do. Yeah.
You know?
Well, again, as I said, I really feel like our experience at the Southern Hotel really embodies our motto, which is make meaningful and healthy travel happen. And I can't say enough about everybody that we've met here, our entire experience, and not just in the hotel, but the entire community. And
Yeah.
it's been really a pleasure for us. So,
Good.
okay, so again, always remember to make meaningful and healthy travel happen for yourself, and remember that all proceeds from our social media are donated to charity, and we really appreciate your support. And thanks for joining us from the Southern Hotel in Covington, Louisiana, and we'll see you next time.